So since getting a couple of hours with Total War 40K the other day, I've been trying to better understand the units, their stats, and the interactions between them. Are things more simplified? Are they more complicated? Are they the same as Warhammer 3? Well, that's what I'm going to try and answer today, based on what I've seen of the game, what CA have said about the game, and my short play experience with it. Do take all this with a pinch of salt though, as I may be wrong on things, or they may just change as we're still in alpha build. Alright, put your socks on, let's go. Alright, so first of all, what does everything on the unit card mean? Well, some things are fairly self-explanatory, so I'm going to ignore those, but the things that aren't as clear, let's start with this at the top. Medium, this is the sort of size classification of the unit. This is a medium-sized unit. There's also light and heavy units, tying into this whole firepower versus thing down here, which shows you how good certain units are against other units. More on that in a bit. This number up here, 6 of 6, that's the entity count for the unit, so 6 Terminators in this unit, with 6 of them currently alive. This little chevron thing, that's the speed of a unit. The Terminators, 27 speed. I think that's pretty slow because Intercessors have 44 speed, which also makes sense because Terminators are big chunky lads. Next to this is vision, the unit's sight range, how far they can see. The fact that this has got a pretty prominent place on the main unit card suggests line of sight is going to be perhaps a little bit more important in this game than previous Total Wars. Next to that, we've got kill count, of course, and there's the health there. And then this little thing represents the unit's morale. Now, at first, I thought this was maybe like, okay, it's +5, so maybe that's like 50. If we're comparing it to Warhammer 3, 50 leadership, +5, right? Makes some kind of sense. But then we remember that these are Terminators, and Terminators at 50 leadership when they haven't taken any damage is probably unlikely. So, not entirely sure how morale works at the moment. But CA did mention in a stream the other day that while Orcs will rout and run away, Space Marines obviously won't. But they can be battle shocked, whatever that exactly means, and that's going to have some negative effects on them. I'm going to assume battle shock means maybe they take a lot of damage very suddenly, very quickly, and then they get some debuffs from that. Maybe to accuracy, maybe to their melee defense, things like that. But that little symbol and number is morale anyway. Now down here we've got all the weapons that the unit is using as well as their defensive stats, and here is where you'd see the unit abilities. For the Terminators, this is just a withdraw button because they were a reserve, they teleported down and they can teleport back out. But here you'd normally see things like the Assault Marine Jump Pack ability or the Psycho Vortex. So there we go, we understand the unit cards a little bit. Now looking at the firepower versus light, medium, heavy, it might look like everything's been super simplified and there's not actually any stats anymore. Calm down, Grandad, it's all still there, you've just got to click on the weapons now. This is where all the stats are. Projectile armor piercing, range, accuracy, all the stuff a growing nerd needs to really understand the game. And of course there's both melee weapon stats and ranged weapon stats, but they only apply to the actual model in the unit using those weapons. For example, the bolt rifle, you'll see it says at the top, Intercessor ×8. So 8 of the 10 models in this unit are using bolt rifles, not all of them. Or this grenade launcher, for example, only one Intercessor specialist is using this. And that kind of thing is going to be part of the customization that you'll be able to do with the unit. And all in all, the firepower versus will give you these 3 bars and show you what the weapons that your unit has is good against. In this case, Hellblasters, they've got plasma incinerators, that makes them damn good against medium-sized targets. But still quite good at light targets and not very good at heavy. But what determines whether a unit is classed as light, medium, or heavy? Well, to me, it seems to be size, or maybe armor. It seems like some kind of weird combination of both, and there's kind of evidence for both. Because naturally, you could think about the words light, medium, heavy with size or armor, and in Warhammer 3, units were categorized by their size, small or large. For example, with the Orcs, Slugger Boys are classed as a light unit, while Knobs are classed as a medium unit, and a Death Dread is classed as a heavy unit. So while size is a factor, it does make me wonder if armor is maybe a bit of a factor as well, but even that has some discrepancies with Knobs and Mega Knobs being both classed as medium, even though Mega Knobs are considerably more armored than Knobs. If we look at them side by side, Mega Knobs on the right here, it's pretty much only their face that isn't heavily armored. Or how about the light Slugger Boys on the right here? They just don't have much armor on, but they're not much smaller than the Knobs next to them. So yeah, I can't quite decide if it's about size or armor. But we could ask the question, if a unit of Hellblasters shot at both Knobs and Mega Knobs, who are both medium, would it do the same kind of damage to both, or would the Mega Knobs being better protected mean they take less damage? Well, there is actually an armor stat on the units. If you look at their defensive stats, this one for Intercessors, you can see they've got 100 armor. So assumedly, I didn't check, but Mega Knobs have probably got more armor, and thus they take less damage from Hellblasters than Knobs would. So at the moment I'm just a bit confused on how a unit gets classified as light or medium and what that really means. Does a medium unit shooting at a medium target do more damage? Do they have some kind of anti-medium bonus, like a bonus versus large or a bonus versus infantry in Warhammer 3? I'll guess not, but perhaps it's more about armor piercing and light does refer more to the armor. But then I do know that Ogren are classed as medium and they don't really have much armor on, so still some things to figure out there. Light and medium aside though, heavy is a pretty simple category to understand. It's all the big boys. Dreadnoughts, tanks, Death Dreads, Stompers, Battle Wagons, all these things are classed as heavy, so essentially it seems that vehicles are the heavies. So quite simply, to defeat enemy vehicles you're going to need units that have that heavy bar nice and full up. Which kind of essentially means something like Eradicators are an anti-large unit, if you will. And then something like these Knobs that have Scorchers, their light bar is nice and full, so they're good against infantry. Which against Space Marines isn't much good because they're all medium. So it's almost like good old bonus versus large and bonus versus infantry is being replaced by anti-heavy and anti-light, perhaps. Or maybe, just maybe, I'm overthinking this. Perhaps this light, medium, heavy system is just a way to convey the complex information of Total War in a much simpler format for newer players or those that struggle to understand all the units and stats. And so it's much easier to just look at a unit and go, okay, the heavy bar is mostly full, so that means this unit's good against vehicles. I'm going to aim it at the Death Dreads and Battle Wagons. So you don't have to understand what all the stats do or what all the combination of stats mean for a unit. You can just simply go on that. But I feel like there is still some advantages to take for those of us more experienced players who do understand the stats and how different combinations can mean different things. And we'll be able to utilize that knowledge to more optimally use the unit than somebody who's just clicking their heavy unit killer to kill a heavy unit. So the stats and things aren't really simplified as such, just the means of conveying the information perhaps is with the much simpler to understand light, medium, heavy system. But things are going to get more complex in a different way with the addition of customization, because now even units that are all the same type can be completely different. Let's take good old Knobs again, a word which I've said far too many times in this video. Please don't demonetize me, YouTube, thanks. This unit of Knobs, as we can see, is very good against light units, likely because of the combi Scorchers they have. Whereas this unit of Knobs is quite different in that it's kind of a bit even all across the board. It can kind of do a little bit of everything. But then there's this unit of Knobs that is damn good against medium and heavy targets and still pretty good against light, and thus it's completely different from the other two. So 3 of the exact same unit, but they're all completely different from each other. Now where this is going to be a problem is when you're looking at a massive orcs coming for you like this, I'm going to have to individually look at all the Knob units to see which ones are the threat. So if my Dreadnought stood there taking them out and then this unit of Knobs comes along, well my Dreadnought needs to be careful because this one is anti-heavy, that could be dangerous. Whereas this unit of Knobs comes along with the flamethrowers, they're going to do basically nothing to the Dreadnought so he doesn't have to worry. But as I say, looking at this, can you quickly identify which Knobs are the dangerous ones to my Dreadnought? Me neither. I'm going to have to actually click on them and look at what each unit can do, because they're not all just the same anymore, as they always are in every other Total War game. So this is going to be a new challenge with units that are the same unit and you know what they can do, but because of customization, they could do something completely different than what you might expect. At least to some extent. Maybe not all units are going to be like this. Something like Intercessors will probably be quite flexible in the specialist weapons you can bring, but a unit like Eradicators, they're designed for one thing, and that's taking out the big stuff. They're going to come with melters, so they're always going to be good at taking down heavy, but maybe you can make them slightly better at light or medium. Or Aggressors, they're a close range unit ideally, they want to be in melee a lot of the time, they do have a ranged attack but it's short range, so you're probably not going to be able to outfit them with long range weapons, breaking kind of what they're supposed to be about. And you will have more elite units like Terminators that are just kind of good everywhere, and thus they're incredibly flexible. So units are going to be pretty dynamic in how you can outfit them, but they're going to be even more dynamic because the specialists that you put in a unit can die, and if they do, then that unit's going to change. So for example, let's say you've got some Intercessors and they can bring 3 specialist weapons along, and you choose to bring 3 missile launchers. That means they're going to be great against vehicles, and your firepower versus heavy bar is going to be maxed out. But let's say by chance those 3 specialists get killed right at the start of a battle, your firepower versus heavy bar is now going to probably go way down, and thus now you've pretty much just got a normal unit of Intercessors that isn't that dangerous to heavy. For example, to use Knobs as an example again, because apparently I just love talking about Knobs today, your unit of Flamer Knobs that look like this and are great against light may look like this after all the Flamer boys have died, and thus you're not so good against light anymore, although this isn't the same unit, but you get the idea. So units are going to dynamically change before the battle when you customize them, but as those things die in battle, they're going to dynamically change again. So it's going to be difficult to keep track of what the hell every unit can do at any given time. But I believe this is pretty much how tabletop is, right, tabletop nerds? Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't play tabletop, but I know a fair bit, but I think that's pretty much how it works. Units will have specialists. If those die in battle, well, they're gone and so are their weapon. But does that translate to Total War? Well, it's either going to be an annoying thing that's really hard to keep track of and makes it difficult to really get good matchups and play the game well, or it's going to be an interesting new challenge that players are going to have to adjust to be able to keep track of all your units and the enemy units and what they can do at any given time. And there's a couple of other ways to change units which are a bit more normal to Total War, like these Hellblasters here. They've currently got 1 bar versus heavy, you can see on the left there, but as I get closer I'm going to use their overcharge ability, which is going to severely boost the damage, as you can read there. And if you put your eyes on the medium and heavy bars and watch those ready, you'll see once I've used that ability, those 2 bars go way up. So now with that ability, they're 4 times better against the heavy that they're shooting at, which signals that more armor-piercing damage makes you better against heavy, and maybe the light-medium-heavy system is just about armor and armor-piercing. Now, a little earlier on in this situation, watch the medium and heavy bars here. You see I've got 2 bars in my heavy for these Hellblasters, but now it's gone down to 1. So what happened there? Why did my Hellblasters randomly lose some firepower? Nobody died, they're still 10 of 10. My only guess is that they were stood near a captain unit that was maybe buffing them in their damage, and as they moved forward towards the battle wagon, they moved away from the captain and lost the buffs. That's my guess anyway, just a random thing I came across, may have just been a bug, can't be sure. So all in all, I don't think stats and units have been simplified in any way, it's just the way they're conveying the information is a bit simpler, and that makes it more accessible for newer players, and I think that's ultimately a good thing. But there's still some questions to be asked, even though we can understand stats a little bit. There's all the different new systems and some of the old systems. Are they still there? Is there a fatigue system? How does morale properly work and that battle shock mechanic for the Space Marines? We've got the suppression system, the cover system, the importance of line of sight, destruction. So many questions, but that's another video for another day, I think. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. I hope you've learned something useful. If you'd like to support the channel, check out the YouTube membership or the Patreons. Otherwise, I will see you in the future.